Okay, we're going to tentatively call this one Mantis Man, Scorpion King, Electro Woman and Dynagirl, Peopling of the New World, and Ancient Catastrophes. And we're going to pull that into it and a few more things. Um, just for starters here, they're saying that there are these petroglyphs that are of a mantis type creature, but more of a mantis man that they have found here, and just to spoil it for you, in the new world. And they're making connections in all of this. You can see how this guy has a claw over here that's kind of wall, and same thing right here. And but really they kind of look like circles, somewhat incomplete, but they've shown that they make sure they're incomplete on the top one for some reason. But men have hands, and maybe it's just all some symbology that goes with it. And there's a lot of them, and I wish they had a group of them to show, because I could show you some of the differences in them, because some of them look like Scorpio, and some of them look like this Mantis Man, and a lot of people have called it an ant man or an ant people, which I'll try to get into back into here in a little bit. But you can see this little crown here that's on the mantis. It's sticking up, and that's shown here. But if you look real close, you can kind of see how they've drawn no eyes, but a scratch of a nose that gets wider, and then it just stops. And then below it, there's the little mustache that curls back and forth. So it maybe that's not a mustache, maybe that's a mouth. Whatever. I mean, scorpions don't have mustaches either in any way. So let's just get into this and show you a couple of related articles, and I'll show you a scorpion image from over 10,000 years ago too, that kind of shows you a connotation for those circles could be dots, just like in a constellation. One thing I'll throw in here before I get started, so I don't try to do it later, is you can check out this Mantis here. He's pretty cool. This is a type that's found around in Iran, where this is, and you can bet in elder times there was a huge forest there, ancient cedar forest they talk about, in a time before the nothing came. And this type of creature is a snatcher, and if you look, he's clawed on both sides and got this prong type deal, and he can take and snatch. And they show him to even catch birds. I've seen footage of one catching a hummingbird before, and all kinds of things. It's pretty brutal. But other forms of them look like orchids and things, and they get on orchids and they match that, and then bugs come along and they just snatch and just grab them and eat them and stuff. And it's pretty wicked to watch. And most people think of mantises because of kung fu and things, of being some oriental thing, but this seems to be a worldwide deal, and they're going to connect it to the Americas also in this other article that has to do with this. This is an article that led off the second one I'm going to show you, and I'm showing it first because it's got a better opening picture. One thing else I'd like to add into it, this mantis shrimp here, or the mantis insect arthropod that we know of. There's also a praying mantis shrimp that has the same type of effect, and there's different types of them. There's some they call snatchers, and they have this type of effect where they grab fish out of the water. They have eyeballs that are independent of each other and things too. It's real cool. Some are very pretty, but the ones that are very pretty and that people usually think of are the peacock mantis shrimp, and this outside right here has a club built onto it, and it's a hard piece. And instead of snatching at it, they actually take and thump the thing like this, pow, and they hit it. And it's one of the fastest squirted movements in nature, if not the fastest. And maybe I'll do a video about it. They crack snails and crabs and things. I've seen one kill a stingray, literally popping it in the forehead and cracking its head, and killed a stingray. So, on diver footage. So, hey, mantis are the world around, but it could have something to do with some of the scorpions too. For this same guy image that you see over here, sometimes in his middle line here, that line isn't there, but the dots are still there, and people have said that has to do with electric plasma. We'll try to touch upon all that. So here's prehistoric mantis man petroglyph discovered in Iran. There's a Cookie Man, but it's a cycling jersey, and I don't think cyclists are going to be, well, maybe they are crazy about cookies and just can't do anything about it. Prehistoric Mantis Man petroglyph discovered in Iran, a rare rock carving found in central Iran's Temara rock art site, or Khamenei County, in central Iran, with 6 limbs, has been described as part man, part mantis. Invertebrate animal rock carvings or petroglyphs are rare, and entomologists have teamed up with archaeologists to try to identify the motif. And there's a few groups of them that did it. Wow, now they're on sale, guys. We associated the carvings with others around the world and with the local 6-legged creatures, which its prehistoric artists could have encountered. Entomologist Mahmoud, I'm going to just pass on that, University of Iraq, University Kazakhstan Institute of Iran, and Taiwan University teamed up with a freelance archaeologist and rock experts and to describe the petroglyph in a new paper published in the Open Access Journal of Orthoptera Research. And this is in bugs. So, strangest things, and people get a hold of some stuff. Here we go. The 14-centimeter carving was first spotted during the survey between 2017 and 2018, but could not be identified due to its unusual shape. And apparently it's up here in these rocks, maybe over here, but apparently right here. And the 6 limbs suggest an insect, while the triangular head with big eyes and the grasping forearms are unmistakably those of praying mantis, a predatory insect that hunts and captures prey like flies, bees, and even small birds. An extension on its head even helps narrow the identification to a particular genus of mantis in that region, known as Impusa. Even more mysterious are the middle limbs, which end in loops or circles or dots. The closest parallel to this archaeology is the Squatter Man, and that's the one where it's not connected but the dots are there. A petroglyph figure found around the world also depicting a person flanked by circles, and that might have a connection. Imagine if maybe for some it was a mantis and for others it was a scorpion, and because these people were doing this back in a prehistoric time of Scorpio, which would put it at 16,000 BC-ish, to coming right up on the Younger Dryas, starting to happen, but not yet. And then we have Taurus and Aries, and then Pisces with the fish, and it goes on. So there's that person flanked by circles. Now, whether they could represent a person holding a circular object, or an alternate hypothesis is that the circles represent auroras caused by atmospheric plasma discharges. And a theory that I want to touch upon, that I wanted to do a video on, and the only piece of video that I started to put in it in part 1, they flagged, so I kind of set it aside, was the idea that people are saying that there could have been this big solar discharge, right? And that could have caused the thing, and could have caused the Younger Dryas, and this could have happened, and that could have happened. And what if it's kind of all of them? In fact, it looks like the Younger Dryas stretches out for longer, so what if one was this or one was that, or both of them? Like, we got struck by a couple of things, but one missed us, but it hit the sun, and that caused a flare, like quite often happens when you see a comet hit and it goes, "Fall," but it did it back at us. So you get that type of flare, and what that would cause if we had already had them come through our atmosphere with all the crap in our atmosphere going on because of that, it would perhaps cause these aurora borealis effects much, much further south than anyone ever sees them, and they would light up because of things like this. And during a solar flare, things typically like that would happen. They talk about solar flares may being the cause in the 1500s that the paintings that I did a video about not too long ago, that ancient aliens tried to say, look, it's aliens, because they draw all these weird shapes in the sky, but it looks like that was caused from something like that too. So it could be aurora discharges, but how does that get to be Electro Woman and Dynagirl, or ElectroMan, or He-Man, or these type of things? Well, I don't know. Did they ever see somebody struck by lightning and all these ball lightning showed up and da-da-da, and he was gonna die but he didn't die, and all of a sudden he was real smart or something because it comes special? I mean, You can just make up all kinds of crazy things on it, but nothing seems feasible enough to go with, you know? But at the same time, what if that happened too? What if the cometary thing broke up and a big chunk of it did hit the sun, but some of it slapped the earth, and then some pieces came around and got us again after that? A solar flare off the first one, off the second, whenever it did that. You know, there's still Comet Inky somehow named that, and all these other things are just too conspicuous. And talking about how these planets did this and that, and it goes, well, that kind of fits with Tiamat and Bahamut and the ancient stories and tales that I go with some of my other videos. Check them out, although I haven't done one recently on that whole concept, have I? It's presently impossible to tell exactly how the old petroglyphs are, because sanctions in Iran prohibit the use of radioactive materials needed for radiocarbon dating. However, experts Jan Bauer and Gus Van de Veen examined the Tamar site and estimated the carvings were made about 40,000 to 4,000 years ago. Well, you can take a chip off a rock near there too, and you know that patina and stuff going on, or you know, get some chunk of that, and you can take it and have it radiocarbon dated. You know, so you can send things off to lab, so I guess they just wanted to mention that. Only one can guess why prehistoric people felt the need to carve a Mantis man into rock, but the petroglyphs suggest that humans have linked Mantids to the supernatural and perhaps the cosmos since ancient times. And you can imagine, you know, with the power of venom and stinging and could kill somebody, that just like snakes, they get an ancient power too. As stated by the authors, the carving bears witness that in prehistoric, almost as today, praying mantis were animals of mysticism and appreciation. And apparently this is the area we're talking about, whether it's up on those mountains or behind us here, and you can see this plain that people are at. But I'm telling you, in elder times, there was all these cedar forests that were around here that they took away, and it helped to make the Dust Bowl, Oklahoma effect of the nothing that came here now. And sure, there's some irrigation going out, and certain people like Sumerians tried to keep their area irrigated, but the nothing hit the places in between and just took it over a time before people went to greener pastures. So let's look at another showing here, see if it'll just go right to it. And this is one I did recently. I think I've put it out before this, and it talks about there's a connection with Osiris to Göbekli Tepe, because the ancient Armenian name for it was actually Portasar, port meaning some type of navel or umbilical cord, and also we think of it in boating in so many ways, and being a navel of the earth type of concept here, and then Asar being the name of Osiris. But on these pillars, what I was going to show you here, and the one that everybody tries to key on, see if I can get over and show you, is this scorpion. And you can see that he doesn't have the straight crown out of him, but he does have the little fork things that looks the same, and somewhat claw arms, but these aren't claws. And in Scorpio, they're drawn with dots. Now we see in the Sumerians, they have ones in scorpion people, and they have tails that kind of look like this, and ... kind of gets smaller rather than being real big. And a mantis will have a big bulb butt, you know, it kind of offsets it, and it stands on the front four that are here and puts its head out with the front two that are on it, making its six. So difference between like an arthropod and blah 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 blah. Anyhow, so wanted to show you that, so we can go show you this. So evidence suggests that prehistoric Iranians migrated to the Americas. Now, this might correlate what I have shown before in a few other videos on X haplogroup and genetics of people of the New World. But they're wanting to throw this out here on this paper too. And this is just done May 12th, so a few days ago. And I don't know why they picked this picture instead of Mantis Man, for that's what they talk about. but you can see here it's what ancient depiction of a deer. Yeah, there were deer in this area and everything. Some prehistoric residents of the Iranian plateau migrated to the Americas, and they're throwing that out there. An Iranian archaeologist and researcher says, based on evidence from similarities between the petroglyphs and cave painting symbols in central Iran and the ones found in the Americas. After years of exploring ancient paintings inside Iran's cave mountains and other parts of the globe, amazing achievements have been made in this regard, Mohammad Nesfarid told IRNA in an interview released on Tuesday. The ancient paintings of cave walls and mountains in Iran have been compared with ones in other parts of the world. Their similarities in appearance and motifs have been amazing, according to quotes by Professors John Bauer and Gus Van de Veen. So this is the people hooked up before. He said, adding, this research and findings are presented to enthusiasts and researchers for the very first time. The archaeologist underlined that such petroglyphs may be missing link in human history and in arts. Appearance similarities, artistic styles, and uniform themes of ancient petroglyphs and cave paintings of this land, Iran, reveal many missing links in human history and arts, one of which is a resemblance of ancient artifacts in Iran with ones found in the American continent. And this has to do with what Iran's named for and the ancient Aryans. But let's continue. The discovery of equestrian motifs with leopard-like horses in Iran, which Indians called Appaloosas. I used to ride one named Buttons. It's a blanket Appaloosa, and the butt part of it was the snowflake Appaloosa part, where it's got little dots all over it. And it wasn't a buckskin color. It was really more of a fawnish red or red ochre type color with white. And it had a white blaze on its nose too. Call it Buttons, but a smart as hell horse. But the Indians called it Appaloosa, and you'll still see it today. It's one of the reasons for this migration, which can be seen on the walls of caves and mountains of Khurelzalgand and Nekshekar regions, which date from 11,000 years ago. They are similar to the leopard-like horses of Balochistan, and this is airing up in there in that land of the equestrians that we talk about so much, that had actually gotten these different breeds of horses going and domesticated and so on. Nesfarid said French archaeologists have previously said that paintings of the leopard horses on the Maral cave showed a special species of horse which lived only in Europe, while women living in Balochistan 11,000 years ago saw such a genuine Iranian horse. And there are what's known as Persian type horses and stuff, and Arabian horses that have been known, and that's still brought from these same people, but it's variations on a theme, and each one has certain things and characteristics, whereas one is, like we're talking about, is more of a thoroughbred style. There are work horses that are quarter horses that are even a little faster at a short period of time. So think of it this way, it's a quarter-mile car, but it's not like that, car that'll go 300 miles an hour and can back off to 240 and just roll it forever as long as there's not a turn. It's a car that just gets up to 300 miles an hour and puts on the brakes. It's how fast can he get there. And ancient stories, whenever I was a kid, there was this guy whose last name was Fitzgerald, I believe, and he wrote a bunch of books, and it was stories of kids and trickery and these kind of things in them, but it was kind of neat, and kind of Sherlock Holmesy and kind of stuff, and Hardy Boys, if you will, but different and older. And he talked about in one race where he was going to race this kid that had a thoroughbred, and they had a quarter horse, and they were laughing at him. And so what he did was he did the tortoise and hare, and he outran the dude, and then he would slow trot the horse to cool it down. And when the guy would catch up, he would haul ass again, and he never quite could catch him after that, and he won the race. So anyhow, different types of horses for different things. In fact, we talk about Clydesdales and huge horses like that, and the form of horse known as an Appaloosa. They're domesticated and seen riding on the walls of the mountains of Balkistan and are footprints of the Indian dream horse. Appaloosa are the same leopard horse taken from ancient Iran by immigrants to the Americas. He noted that studies of Iranian lithographs, especially ones carried out on the Tamara Rock Art site in Khomeini County, which is probably named after Ayatollah Khomeini, central Iran, show that thousands of years ago the inhabitants of the Iranian plateau migrated to the Americas. And this again might explain X haplogroup, which I can show you something. Let's read this side panel here. These migrations took place from the Bering Strait in an area between the northeast of Asia and the northwest of the Americas, or from the frozen oceans before the 10th millennium BC. One of the paintings found among the mountain petroglyphs in Khomeini depicts a hunterman on horseback already, which, like the American Indians, carries blades made of bird feathers on his back. Oh, so he's got like a headdress, or like the scouts' feathers and feather headdress situation, and that's still over here in the old world and not in the new world. And I've told you about Proto-Indo-European connections and stuff, but it's weird when you look up X haplogroup. Let me do that right now. I've already got it pulled up here, and X haplogroup here is seen as a human mitochondrial DNA haplogroup is found in America, Europe, Western Asia, North Africa, into Egypt and stuff, and even through the Horn. But haplogroup X arose from N, which happened out in Asia, roughly 30,000 years ago, just prior or during the last glacial maximum. It's in turn ancestral to the subclads X2 and X1, which arose around 20,000 years ago and 12,000 years ago, respectively. And it's found in approximately 7% of native Europeans, 3% of all North Africans, but if you get into it, there are certain populations that they are huge with, such as people found in the Caucasus Mountains and Georgia, 8%, Orkney Islands and Scotland people, which that makes sense if you understand Aryan migrations, and among the Druze community in Israel, subclads X2A and X2G are found in North America, but not present in native South Americans. And that hooks up to all the ideas of ancient connections and what the difference between a South American and a North American too is. Then at the site Abu Sir El Melik, where they did all of those Egyptian mummies and found all kinds of Anatolian and early European hunter-gatherer haplogroups in the mummies of them, and it's back from before, and so before the New Kingdom and in the Roman period, so that encompasses before Ixos and through that, and they thought they'd see a huge difference in the way it flip-flopped around, and it showed continuity. But in that, they find this X haplogroup, and in North America, it's found in Algonquin peoples. So if you look at this is all northeast, and I don't know why they don't show it along with Mandan Sioux, but really don't have any of those left while they're showing Sioux. But that's one variation. And can't pronounce it, Navajo and Yakama. So certain people have it, certain people don't. Everybody thinks an Indian is a guy that really looks exactly like this guy or the guy on a nickel, but there's a lot of variations on people. But unlike four Native American MDTNA haplogroups, ABCD, X is not strongly associated with East Asia. Bang. Well, why is it not with East Asia? Well, the main occurrence of X in Asia is discovered so far in the Altai people of Siberia, and this is not going to show it. Siberia? And so over here, but Altai is way over here, not over there. So it shows you an ancient connection, and with the Eskimoid and Inuit type people that are living there, right? But they also tell you that X2 is hooked up with the Solutrean hypothesis, and Solutreans coming across from North America, and people that were in Europe back at the time of the last ice age in the lower points below the glaciers. And Kennewick Man was shown to have X2, and I've done a video about him, and his phenotype off of him, if I can get it to stay, his phenotype is not really looking like the typical Indian that we would think of today. And so where does it show up? Well, ironically, they always show the map like this, and if you thought about cutting it in half and sticking it together the other way, then it would be darker through the Mediterranean and out, darker in North America and there, very little connective going on here, but some, and a strange patch of people in the middle of where we're talking about. And so all these people that are shown to have X that are shown into North American Indians, and not really in the southern states, not in what we call Mexicans today, are in South Americans. And that's strange. So let's get back to it. So they show the horseback people over 10,000 BC, and I've shown that in some other videos, but elsewhere in his remarks, that's where I'd explain this type of cover and hunting can be seen amongst Indians living in different parts of the Americas through documents and photographs taken. I wish they'd show some. These numerous prehistoric figures can show the migration of the inhabitants of the Iranian plateau to the American continent during the past millennia. Earlier in March, a team of entomologists and archaeologists concluded that a previously founded petroglyph shows six-limbed creature with the head and arms of a praying mantis. The rare 14-centimeter rock carving was first spotted in the Terramea Rock Art site, which we talked about, and during the surveys between 2017 and 2018, but could not be identified due to its unusual shape, as we talked about before. So they're going off the same thing. In fact, where I got the other one is related news. They estimated again to go between 40,000 and 4,000 years ago, and if it has to do with Scorpio, if Scorpio used to be a mantis, that would be 16,000, to roughly 14,000 years ago. One can only guess why prehistoric people felt the need to carve Mantis Man into a rock, but it suggests that humans have linked Mantis to the supernatural since ancient times, as stated by the authors. Carving bears witness that in prehistory, almost as today, praying mantises were animals of mysticism and appreciation. Again, we see that through the Orient and stuff, and the fighting technique of tiger and mantis and these things that they chose from animals that were depicting certain modes of defense and attack. Prehistoric rock art provides insight into the past eras and cultures, as archaeologists classify the tools for the carving by specific eras, incising tools including flint, metal, or thigh bones of hunted prey. And yeah, this is the tag that I went to, and so 2 was in 1. And so they should have picked another one, but they can grab patina off of that simply. But again, go back here to this. And look at those wild shirts. Hawaii. Hawaii. Boom. So tell me what y'all think. But there's stories about ant people that the Indians had too. And it's strange how you can connect those two maybe, but there was these people. I mean, were they ants? Well, when you think of miners coming around and how they dig out the earth and they throw the earth around and stuff, that's kind of ant people, isn't it? But then if those same people are building those mounds all around, hey, your yard gets full of little mounds sometime, and boy, doesn't that look like those prehistoric Indians in Mississippi Valley and all over the Americas, where that's not really associated to any of the local people there. For most of it's disassociated. For the Indians weren't the people that lived there at that time. When they made the reservations, they moved them to there, and they weren't the people that were there at the time anyhow. I'm not calling for us to go full investigation out, but a little more should be done. But I think a lot of damage was done in the old times, because there's so many Smithsonian reports and so many reports from farmers and things that had dug into the mounds and found giants and all kinds of things that we don't get to hear about anymore either. But here's something where they have that paper and they're connecting it to the ideal that people in North America had this too. And I've talked about ancient symbology a lot. Some of my other videos, I show these connections here, and I show the deal, and I talked about the plasma guy in one of my other ones too. But relating it all together and saying that it happened at the same time as maybe a solar flare, and the reason for that solar flare was a cometary impact of a major part of the comet. Smaller fragments that were shattered off of it came and hit us, came back and hit us again later than that, 800 years later, and that makes up for all of it. And a solar flare, and that'll just cover all the bases, won't it? Well, let's see if we can figure out the real reality of it all. But in that symbology, there's all kinds of things shown, just a circle with a line through it, like it looks like his head. But instead of his head looking like an apple with a core going out of it, it's just a circle with a line through it. Or one that also catches you, and I've said it goes back to the time before the Indians even came over into the Americas, is the swastika. And these people that had it sacred from way back when. And so that gets over here too. But that happened way before. So did this totally happen way before? And when are these people pinpointing the fact that they had happened? Just because they go one way, does that mean they can go another way? And one if by land, but two if by sea. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. Tell me what you think down in the comments. Peace.